Ladies and gentlemen, I've got some absolutely excellent news because for the first time in about 8 months, I've actually got pretty new Overwatch 2 footage. All right, guys, welcome to the channel. So enjoy the 5v5 Pro show match that was held during the Overwatch League finals because finally we've got a bit more new Overwatch 2 gameplay. You've got to love it. Anyway, the point of this video is we really need to discuss what's going on with Overwatch 2 and sort of the way the developers are approaching it because actually we were given a lot of information in the previous stream. Now, a lot of people were saying, okay, they only really showed Sombra rework off. They only showed the Bastion rework off. Then we just seen a bit of 5v5. It's very hard to see what's going on in this 5v5 because balance isn't there. Some heroes are reworked, others aren't. It's a bit of a mess. Not all heroes are available. Any new heroes are obviously not there because they want to show the new heroes off when they're ready and all of that stuff. But if we start reading in between the lines, we can actually kind of see where they're going with the development of this game. And actually, this is why I think this is one of the biggest updates we've had, relatively speaking, especially in the last couple of, well, 8 months, right? All right, guys, let's get into this. So let's take a look at the Sombra rework first. Now, this one, I think is on a, can I say this? On a meta level, this is way more devastating than the Bastion rework because what we've got is sort of this dichotomy between changing a hero to making it more effective at the way it was maybe designed to have been played initially. And then the Bastion rework is let's just make it super fun because Bastion's rework is super duper fun. And it really is almost like the headline of the two reworks from the stream that we got. Now, this shows you that what Blizzard is trying to do is make a very fun game, make fun changes. But also, on the other hand, they're trying to make maybe a balanced game at launch, which I think is obviously going to be impossible, but also enhance some of the heroes. So we do know they're going to rework all of the cast, and we've seen some of the reworks so far. So we can use Reinhardt as an example. So his charge can now be cancelled, and he can actually control it better. So it's more responsive when he's charging, and he gets 2 fire strikes. And apart from that, he gets things like a reduction in his shields and things like that. But that's kind of simplistic, right? But it kind of works in a way because that's what, they want to make Reinhardt this big guy in armor that rushes in, throws fire strikes everywhere and starts doing damage basically and deploys his shield when he's trying to block high damage moments. That's kind of the same way they're approaching the Sombra rework because they're upgrading hack, they're upgrading a passive, they're upgrading a weapon, they're upgrading a stealth, they're upgrading an EMP. The only thing they're not touching is translocators. So this is one of those examples of a change, a rework, which is, right, how can we make this hero be the best this hero could be, or how we envision this hero to be from the get-go? Because remember, Sombra, when she first came out, she just had invis and she could hack, and it was like, okay, great. And she went through quite a few changes, and ultimately we end up with the Sombra we've got now, which is a very specialized hero. You only see her in certain comps. She's very hard to make work because you need full team coordination. Instead, what they've done is gone, actually, for Overwatch 2, because we're reducing to 5v5, we don't need as much team coordination, and we also want heroes to maybe be more self-sufficient. So let's rework Sombra and make her more self-sufficient. So what we essentially get is this. A passive now also deals 50% more damage to hack targets. So when she hacks stuff, a passive's called Opportunist, she then does 50% damage to that hacked target. So it's almost like a personal Discord orb. That's really powerful. That's like massively powerful. Because you think about it, you hack a target and then you just do damage to them. That's a lot. And if it's a target for a dive or something, I mean, that target arguably is going to blow up. And even if that target had Discord on top of it as well, it was starting to get ridiculous amounts of damage going in. Her primary fire, the damage has been reduced from 8 to 7. So it doesn't do as much damage, but the spread has been reduced by 20%. This makes it more focused. This makes it a little bit harder to actually hit with the weapon because you're going to have to aim a little bit better. But all of this is massively negated by the fact that you can just hack a target and then you do 50% extra damage. So that's actually massive. So it doesn't matter that they've nerfed the machine pistol because, well, you're going to do tons of damage to targets that you're hacking. Then we go on to EMP. Now, EMP, again, this is the philosophy of instead of being reliant on your team, let's just let you do damage because everybody likes damage. Everybody likes doing damage. This is the big issue that Overwatch currently has and has had for years. Everybody wants to play damage. People like playing tanks, but they hate sitting there being hacked, just being crowd controlled, being killed. Nobody likes that. Everybody wants to do damage. Even supports, to some extent, want to do damage, right? It goes back to feedback, right? The way the game's designed is it feels better to play DPS in almost every single way because you get a lot of UI feedback. So if you're doing damage to people, it feels great. If you're killing people, they're popping up in the kill feed and it's your name next to them. It feels great. You get a lot of positive feedback, whereas tanks, walking around trying to control space, yeah, you don't really get any feedback from that. Anyway, what they've done to EMP is they've removed the effect that it deals any additional shield-specific damage. However, they've added the effect that it deals 40% of enemies' current HP. That's actually nasty. Now, there is something we need to talk about here, because in some of the older builds of Overwatch 2, there was this concept of over shields, over health, and all of that. I believe now all of that's just been condensed down to effectively shields. And I think armor's thrown into that, although don't quote me on that. It seems to be a system that they're trying to streamline, because the armor system in Overwatch has always been kind of really convoluted, really difficult to understand. And I think they're working on that. Anyway, back to Sombra. So translocator, no change. Hack, this is where it gets really funky. So hack has got a load of different components to it now. So the cooldown is reduced from 8 to 3 seconds. Now this means you can hack faster. So again, this feels better as the player, right? You're hacking, you hack straight back up. It's literally 3 seconds instead of 8. It means you can play around your hack a lot faster, which like sort of goes into the whole philosophy of Overwatch 2 being this faster 5v5 game. The duration has been increased to 8 seconds. So when you get hacked, it now lasts for 8 seconds. But ability lock duration has been reduced from 5 seconds to 1 second. So what this means is when you get hacked, you lose control of your abilities for 1 second. Now, this means that hack no longer becomes an ability you use to stop other players using their abilities, which feels absolutely shit if you're the player having this done to you. Instead, it becomes an interrupt. It becomes a 1 second stun, effectively. Well, it's not a stun, because a stun, you would lose control of your character. You don't in this. You just stop doing whatever you're doing. So if you're charging with Reinhardt, you stop charging. If you're in Bastion's artillery mode, you stop being in the artillery mode. If you're using Coalescence as Moira, if she's even still got that in Overwatch 2, you stop doing it. It's an interrupt. And that is really, that's a very elegant way of getting rid of the annoying component to a hack. Then, the cooldown, reveals hacked enemies to Sombra's team through the walls for 8 seconds, which is the duration of the hack. So go back to thinking about setting up a dive or just a target to kill. Sombra runs in, hacks the target. Everyone can see the target for 8 seconds. The target's interrupted for 1 second. Sombra does 50% extra damage to it. You want to kill that target. Imagine if you've got a Sombra and Tracer as your DPS, and Sombra finds Zen in the back line, hacks him, and Tracer coordinates with the attack. That Zen is just going to disappear. That is disgusting levels of damage. Cooldown is no longer halved when you hack a health pack, so it's always 3 seconds. If you hack a health pack or a player, you've always got a 3-second cooldown. Health pack hack duration has been reduced from 60 to 30 seconds, which I think is fair enough. And then we get onto stealth, the other very important component, or it's very important to the sort of feel of Sombra, right? The whole fantasy of the character. So fade in time is reduced by 50%. Detection radius is increased from 2 meters to 4 meters. So you're easier to detect by the enemy. If you get near them, it'll pop up like, ooh, detected. So you've got to really commit to an attack here. So you can't be sort of scouting around. They will find you easier. However, using hack no longer removes stealth, but Sombra does become briefly visible while hacking. So when she does this, she hacks, becomes visible, then goes back into stealth. So it doesn't actually break stealth anymore. This is nice. This is like a quality of life thing, and it makes Sombra feel better. So the moral of the story here with the Sombra rework is Blizzard turning it into a scalpel of destruction. She can find a target and eliminate that target. She's invis, she can get into the backline. She can do massive AoE damage with her ultimate. She's just become an absolute weapon. She is a killer. She is nothing like she is in current Overwatch. But I think this almost looks like a natural evolution of her kit if you want to remove the annoying components of Sombra and give her more damage. So that's why this rework, I think, is a great insight into the overall sort of philosophy of Overwatch 2, right? So that's cool. But then we go on to the Bastion rework. Now, this one it's almost like I said, it's complete opposite to the Sombra rework, because this is, we've got a hero in the game that is arguably quite boring to play. Now, I know some people might like Bastion, but think of him. He's very one-dimensional. He's stationary in a game that's all about movement. It just doesn't work. It's not conducive to the game's design. Let's make him fun, right? Everyone memes on him. He's like a throw pick in a lot of scenarios, but let's make him real fun and just go from there. So look at what they've done. Configuration recon, weapon fire rate reduced by 50%. So no longer is this like an assault rifle. It's like when you fire. Damage fall-off range increased to be more accurate at long range. Weapon spread reduced to 0. Now this means you have now got a long-range poke as Bastion, which he didn't have before, which I think can actually be quite strong if you've got the accuracy and the aim to pull it off. So that's kind of a nice change. Then we go on to configuration sentry. Now, he can move while he's firing, but at a reduced movement speed. So the way this works is, it's like old Bastion tank mode, his ultimate. You get the tank tracks, but you've got the minigun on top, basically, and you can move around. The weapon has unlimited ammo. Weapon damage is reduced by 40 seconds. However, it's got a cooldown, and we'll get onto that in a second, because that's part of reconfigure. So basically, when you go into sentry mode, you're in it for a number of seconds, and you're just doing as much damage as you can, and then you pop out of it, and you're back in recon mode. The ultimate is configuration artillery. In artillery mode, Bastion locks to the ground and unleashes a powerful long-range artillery strike. Manually target 3 different locations to strike anywhere on the map. Now, as was discussed during the stream, this is pretty much like a Doomfist ultimate. So you pop this ultimate and you get 3 Doomfist ults you can basically pop down on the map. Now, these at the moment, and again, these figures will all change when the game eventually goes into beta and goes live, is they do 600 damage on impact and then reduce in amounts of damage as the radius goes out. So if you get hit with 3 of these, you're taking 1,600 damage, 1,800 damage, sorry, and that's not good for your health, right? For anyone, that's a lot of damage. Now, this is fun, right? This is an ability where you could maybe pull people into a position for your team to attack them. You could maybe drop 2 artillery strikes behind them, and then 1 where you expect them to go. There's a load of things you can do with this. It's just fun, right? Everything so far is fun with Bastion. Reconfigure, though, which is Bastion's transformation between 2 primary combat modes, now has an 8-second duration and a 10-second cooldown. So when you pop it, you can only go into sentry mode for 8 seconds, right? So you can only roll around as the minigun on tank tracks for 8 seconds. But remember, you're still doing 40% reduced damage to what he does on live. So it's not the current amount of damage he does on live when he's in sentry mode, which makes up for the fact that he can now move, which should, in theory, mean the damage he's doing is a lot more effective damage, because he's not just sitting in a corner waiting for someone to come around the corner. Like, he can actually peek and do all kinds of stuff. He can take part in a push. Self-repair has been completely removed. This is one of the worst abilities in the game, to be honest. It was so boring to use. Crap, get rid of it. Tactical grenade. Now, this is where it gets funky. And I think this actually could be his strongest ability. So, Bastion shoots a tactical grenade that detonates after a short delay and knocks back enemies it strikes. Grenades bounce off walls but stick to enemies and floors. Grenades explode shortly after they stick to an enemy or floor. Now, I think this is really good, because you think about this in, like, you think about using his abilities in concert. So if you're running into a fight and maybe you're in recon mode, you're poking away at range, then you pop into sentry mode maybe, and you start just drilling damage, maybe trying to burn down a barrier or something, or destroy a tank. Then you pop out of that, you fire a tactical grenade. Or maybe even you just stay in recon mode and you start firing tactical grenades and you keep in recon, and you only use sentry if the enemy, like, I don't know, push on your team really strong or something. So this is a fun change. I don't think this is anywhere near as strong as Sombra's rework. Like, Sombra's rework is insanity, to the point of, like, I'm just going to be a Sombra main unless they can show us something even more ridiculous. But that's the thing as well, we've got to remember. There are new heroes that will come out with this game, and I'm sure that they'll be pretty ridiculous as well. You've only got to look at the recent heroes. Well, I'll say recent. The heroes that were added 2 years ago to Overwatch, where, you know, you look at a Sigma. Look at Sigma's kit compared to, you know, like a Reinhardt at the time. It's like Sigma is an evolution of design. So we're going to see that again with Overwatch 2. But again, we're going to see reworks to all of the heroes as well. So I think this is cool. I think this is actually pretty good news for us, guys. Okay, now I want to talk about some comments that Jake made. Now, Jake's a professional Overwatch player. Got a great analytical mind, like one of the biggest brain players out there. And he's got some thoughts on Overwatch 2. And a lot of this centers on 5v5. So I thought it would be interesting to get a sort of pro's perspective on this, because my perspective on it is it's very, like, shallow and low level, but it's almost like you've got one less player on your team. So that's one less person to worry about. So in theory, there should be, like, less toxicity, and the team should be able to work together better. And when you think about everyone being made a bit more sort of independent, you don't really need to rely on your team as much as you used to, in theory. So it kind of adds up for maybe a better experience overall. But again, we need to play the game before we can really form any sort of opinions on that. Anyway, this is what Jake said. Overwatch 2 thoughts. 5v5 is a massive change. Every player is individually more important. In Overwatch 1, tanks are the most important role because they control the nature of teamfights. After 5+ years, there were only 3 fundamental strategies: dive, rush, and poke. Every comp exists somewhere between those 3 extremes. Dive comp fights on the flanks to surround the enemy. Rush comps use abilities to close gaps quickly and dominate close range fights. Poke comps use massive spam pick potential to kill opponents before they are close. Many comps are between extremes, e.g. Bull, Sigma, Zen comps are a mix of dive and poke. Winston, Lucio, and Moira comps are a mix of dive and rush. But in the end, I feel like every strategy came down to those 3 core ideas. Just some make use of them more instead of just one. My idea, a hope, is that competitive Overwatch 2 can reduce the importance of hero picks by, as Space put it, making tanks more like tanky DPS. As much as I love engineering a perfect strategy in Overwatch 1, I think the game in that state cannot grow long term. The game becomes a test of who has the best understanding of comp matchups, maps, and features. While this rewards endless dedication to understanding the game, it is too brutal a punishment for new players, especially those skilled at other FPS who expect to do well. In the end, I think the best case future for Overwatch 2, and I mean the way 99.9% of people play in online matchmaking, not pro play, is one in which hero picks just don't matter like they used to. There will always be people who want a one trick and people who want to play the meta. The only way to harmonize those 2 ways of playing is to weaken the meta and make hero picking less impactful part of the game. To make hero picks less impactful, you must necessarily make heroes more similar to each other. Every hero is closer to a DPS. In pro play, there will always be optimized comps. The key is making those optimizations small enough that the pro comps are not so much better than just picking whatever heroes seem good in ranked. In the end, pro play can only survive if the game is popular. So it will cost some strategic complexity at the top end, but hopefully, in the end, the game will be appealing to a wider group of people. I missed some aspects of Overwatch 1, but I am ready to change with the times, looking forward to the future. With all that said, please, 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 Activision Blizzard, make multiplayer free-to-play. Free-to-play, creator codes, in-game tournaments, etc. would all capitalize on the broader shift to make the game more accessible. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I pretty much agree with everything that he said there. I think the most interesting thing, and again, we kind of touched on this a little bit, is it's the move to making everyone DPS. Now, don't listen to this like, oh my God, Sty, I'm a tank player. I don't want to play DPS. I don't mean it like that, but I mean just you've got more options, right? So everything we've seen of Reinhardt so far is, in Overwatch 2, this is a hero which literally just yeets himself into the enemy team and starts doing damage, throws his fire strikes everywhere, uses his barrier if he has to like maybe protect stuff, but it's no longer his main concern. He isn't the guy who is protecting a choke as our team walk through. That seems to be completely gone. It's like he's going in there and he's tanking through doing damage and messing up the enemy team. In effect, he's brawling, and we know that the Overwatch team have spoken about changing tanks to brawlers simply because that's what they want them to do, and that's what feels more fun. This is the thing, right, guys? It just straight up feels more fun. Look at the tanks that are powerful in the current game. You know, you look at Hammond. Nobody can deny that Hammond isn't fun to play. He is fun to play. But what makes him very frustrating in Overwatch in its current version is he's almost like a lone ranger. It's like Roadhog is the same. They're like lone rangers. They don't really play with the team, and that's how they're stronger, right? It doesn't work. There's all these imbalances in Overwatch, and hopefully these are getting fixed for Overwatch 2. But I think I'm going to leave the video at that, guys. Let me know what you think about this in the comments below. I've tried to go into a bit of detail here because we've had a few days to think about this, but I think this could be a really good time for Overwatch. Of course, I'm going to say this, right? I want Overwatch 2 to do well. But what they've showed us, I'm actually really excited. I'm much more excited than I thought I would have been. I don't really care too much about hero redesigns, like the graphical redesign of the hero. It's like, okay, that's fine, whatever. The ability redesign is what gets me, and I hope that we get to see some new heroes coming out fairly soon. And there's even rumors that Sombra has become, Symmetra has become a support. And I want to see what the hell that even looks like. I mean, what the hell? Anyway, guys, thanks for watching the video. And I will do my best to keep Overwatch news and updates coming towards you guys, as hopefully we start moving closer to maybe some sort of closed or open beta, or we just get more news. I mean, in fact, I want to see news on PvE, because you've got to remember, guys, PvE is meant to be the main thing with this. So come on, Blizz, show us some of that. And yeah, free to play would definitely help multiplayer. Now, actually, before we go, the reason why, so there's a lot of back and forth about this. So the main issue with free to play is hackers, right? So hackers will just get a new account. It's going to be much more difficult to block them. There are ways of doing it. You can hardware ban people, IP ban them, but there are ways around this. Now, more players is healthier for the game. And this is the problem they've got to sort of work out, right? Is their anti-cheat robust enough to deal with it? I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Do they even want to go free-to-play? Maybe free-to-play opens a whole other can of worms, because if you go free-to-play with multiplayer, then it changes the way the game has to be monetized, and you've got all of those issues. But I don't know. All right, guys, let me know what you think about this in the comments below. I think the comments are going to be pretty good on this video. Thanks again for watching and listening. And remember, you can follow me on everything, which is @Stylosa. And I will catch you a lovely, lovely lot on the next video. Toodaloo.